evening along the Malibu coast begins as a carefully constructed dream. One that feels almost defiant in its beauty after months of chaos, scandal, and loss. Candlelight flickers against glass and marble, reflecting the last gold-pink traces of sunset as waves roll gently toward the shore. For Will Spencer and Electra Forrester, the world finally seems to narrow into something manageable, something intimate. This night is meant to be a declaration that love can survive truth. That after betrayals and revelations that shattered identities, two people can still choose each other freely. Will's calm is deliberate, hard-won, built on the belief that he has endured the worst and emerged with clarity. Electra, radiant and unsuspecting, allows herself to trust that stability is no longer a fantasy but a promise within reach. When Will kneels, the moment feels suspended outside of time. The ocean hushes, the air thickens with anticipation, and the ring in his hand catches the dying light, scattering it like a constellation across the marble floor. The proposal is not loud or theatrical. It is tender, grounded, shaped by everything they have survived together. In that instant, Electra sees not the chaos of their families or the scandals that haunt their names, but a future defined by choice rather than inheritance. Her breath catches as joy floods in, the kind that makes the past feel distant and survivable. This is supposed to be the moment where everything finally aligns. The dream fractures without warning. From the shadows beyond the terrace, a figure steps forward, her presence so abrupt and unnatural that it seems to tear through the fabric of the night. Luna Nozawa emerges slowly, deliberately, as if she wants every second of recognition to burn. Her face bears the unmistakable marks of violence and survival, scars that speak of pain endured rather than healed. Her eyes are cold, calculating, and painfully alive. The atmosphere freezes, joy evaporating in an instant, replaced by a visceral sense of threat. This is not an interruption. It is an invasion. Luna's declaration cuts through the stunned silence with merciless clarity. She is not dead. She never was. The story of her death, carefully circulated and widely accepted, was a lie engineered to erase her while others moved in to claim what she was meant to inherit. She describes an orchestrated attempt on her life, carried out by forces powerful enough to manipulate narratives, silence investigations, and convince the world that she no longer existed. Survival, she explains, was not a miracle but a curse, one that forced her into hiding while her enemies consolidated control. Her voice does not tremble. This is not a plea for sympathy. It is an announcement of return. As Luna produces evidence, the weight of her words becomes undeniable. Documents, recordings, and financial trails converge into a single, horrifying conclusion. The mastermind behind the plot is not an outsider or a faceless criminal syndicate, but a high-ranking figure within Forrester Creations itself. The implication detonates like a bomb. This is not merely a personal vendetta. It is a corporate and familial betrayal that reaches into the highest levels of power. The accusation is precise, devastating, and impossible to dismiss. In exposing the truth, Luna implicates an institution long revered as untouchable. Electra and Will stand frozen as the reality of the moment crashes over them. The engagement ring slips from Will's fingers, clattering against the marble with a sound that echoes far too loudly in the sudden silence. That sharp, metallic impact becomes a symbol of everything breaking at once. Love, certainty, celebration, all reduced to fragments on the floor. The proposal, moments ago sacred, is now an artifact of innocence lost. Electra's shock is absolute, her mind racing to reconcile Luna's words with the legacy she has trusted her entire life. Will feels the familiar, sickening pull of history repeating itself. Another moment of hope obliterated by secrets designed to destroy. The restaurant erupts into chaos. Guests whisper, then argue, then openly speculate as disbelief gives way to panic. Phones appear, messages are sent, and within minutes the story begins its rapid transformation into public spectacle. The engagement is forgotten, replaced by a scandal with implications far beyond romance. What was meant to be a private celebration becomes ground zero for a revelation that threatens to engulf one of the most powerful families in Los Angeles. The fallout is immediate and merciless. The Forrester family is thrust into a crisis that is both legal and moral, one that no amount of public relations finesse can contain. Accusations of attempted murder and financial conspiracy trigger investigations that reach deep into the company's foundation. The pressure from media and law enforcement is relentless, exposing fractures that had long been concealed beneath success and prestige. Forrester Creations, once a symbol of unity and legacy, becomes a battlefield of suspicion. Inside the company, paranoia takes hold. Executives and family members scrutinize one another, searching for signs of guilt, betrayal, or complicity. Trust evaporates as quickly as it once formed. Every past decision is reevaluated, every alliance questioned. The fear is not just of exposure, but of proximity. Anyone could be implicated, anyone could fall. The company's power, once a shield, now amplifies the consequences of corruption. For Elektra, the crisis is profoundly personal. Luna's accusation forces her to confront the possibility that the values she was raised to believe in may have been a carefully maintained illusion. The Forrester name, synonymous with creativity and integrity, now carries the stain of calculated cruelty. Elektra's inner conflict sharpens into something unbearable. Loyalty to family versus loyalty to truth. The engagement ring lying forgotten becomes a metaphor for the life she thought she understood. Now irreversibly altered, Will, already scarred by revelations about his own identity, feels the ground vanish beneath him once again. The collapse of the Spencer Empire taught him that legacy can be weaponized. Luna's return confirms that no institution is immune. He looks at Elektra and realizes that loving her now means stepping into a war neither of them chose. His instinct is to protect, but he understands with painful clarity that protection may no longer be possible. The forces at play are larger, colder, and far more dangerous than heartbreak. As the night reaches its breaking point, Luna's gaze locks onto Will and Elektra with chilling intent. Her smile is subtle, controlled, and unmistakably deliberate. This is not the smile of a victim seeking justice, but of a survivor who has waited patiently for the perfect moment to strike. She promises nothing explicitly, yet everything is implied. Her return is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of reckoning. The episode closes not on resolution, but on dread. The ocean continues its endless rhythm, indifferent to human schemes. As alliances crumble and futures fracture, the engagement lies shattered, the Forrester legacy stands accused, and Luna Nozawa steps fully back into a world that thought it had buried her. What comes next is not merely revenge, but a calculated dismantling of power itself. And as her smile lingers in the darkness, one truth becomes unavoidable. This time, the cost of silence will be far greater than the cost of truth. The silence following Luna's smile lasted only a few seconds, but it weighed heavily like an endless void. While everyone was still struggling to process the fact that she was still alive, Luna continued, and it was her next statement that truly shattered any remaining restraint in the room. With a terrifyingly calm tone, Luna declared that the greatest pain of her life had never been buried. Because her child had never died. The child whom the world believed had perished with her in that tragedy was actually still alive. Carefully concealed as a final secret, and now being raised in silence by Poppy. That statement spread like a shockwave, causing the already chaotic space to almost completely collapse. For Elektra, the feeling was no longer shock but utter disorientation. If Luna was telling the truth, then not only had one person been erased from history, but an innocent life had been deprived of the right to know who it was. The thought that a child was growing up in the shadow of lies, protected by concealment instead of truth, made Elektra tremble. She began to realize that what Luna was doing wasn't just exposing the past, but gradually dismantling the entire moral system her family had proudly maintained. Will, standing beside Elektra, felt the cruel repetition of fate. Luna's story echoed painfully in his own life. A child whose destiny was determined by the decisions of adults. Growing up in a distorted truth. Loved but without choice. The thought that another child was living in the very loop he had just tried to escape choked Will. His anger didn't erupt into rage, but settled into a deeper fear. The fear that this history would repeat itself. That no one would learn anything, and that the price would always fall on the weakest. Luna remained unfazed by their reaction. She explained that Poppy's raising the child wasn't accidental, but part of an elaborate cover-up. According to Luna, Poppy was chosen not only because of their blood relationship or closeness, but because of her unwavering loyalty and terrifying ability to remain silent. For years, Poppy played the role of a silent protector, raising the child as her own, keeping it isolated from any trace that could lead back to Luna and the truth about the conspiracy. With each passing year, the secret grew stronger, until even those involved in the original plan began to believe the child truly no longer existed. This news, once it spread, was no longer a mere scandal. It became a moral bombshell. If the child were still alive, every decision, every lie, every action taken to protect it would instantly become an unjustifiable crime. The Forrester family, already reeling from accusations of murder and property theft, now faces an even more dire question. Who agreed to have a child erased from the world? And for what reason? Within Forrester Creations, suspicion transforms into genuine panic. Names once whispered are now being spoken openly, each trying to distance themselves from responsibility. No one believes in the absolute innocence of anyone else. Closed-door meetings are constant. Not to save the company, but to determine who will be the first to be sacrificed if the truth continues to be revealed. The unity once considered the foundation of the Forrester Empire is now a distant memory. Elektra is drawn into a fierce internal struggle. Part of her wants to believe that Luna is manipulating the truth for revenge. That the child's story might be a final psychological blow. But another, deeper and more terrifying part of Elektra realized that Luna's eyes didn't carry the madness of a liar. They were the eyes of a mother who had lived for years with the pain of being deprived, patiently waiting for the day she could reclaim both justice and her own flesh and blood. Elektra understood that if that child appeared, all boundaries between right and wrong would be completely blurred, and no apology could repair the damage already done. Will, looking at Elektra, began to understand that their relationship was facing a test far greater than love itself. If they continued together, they would not only face family backlash, but also the moral responsibility of what to do next. This truth could not be buried any longer. He clearly felt that, unlike previous generations, he could not choose to remain silent and still consider himself a good person. Luna concluded her revelation with a cold calmness. She said that announcing the child's existence was not an impulsive act, but the first step in a plan she had been preparing for years. The child, according to her, was no longer a passive victim, but the key that could unlock the whole truth that the most powerful people were trying to hide. Poppy's raising the child in the shadows only made this reversal uncontrollable when the light finally shone. When Luna left, the atmosphere that remained was not just fear, but a premonition of a deeper collapse awaiting them. Elektra and Will stood amidst the ruins of an evening once destined to be the happiest of their lives, now realizing that this battle was no longer about personal love, but about ending a cruel cycle that had lasted for generations. And somewhere, a child was still alive, growing up in Poppy's shadow, becoming living proof of all that had been distorted, and the spark for the most violent storm yet to